What's shaking booktube? My name's Cam. This is actually a pretty special video. So thanks for clicking on it. Thanks for watching. This is kind of personal. It's hard to describe this video, but you read the title correctly. I will be shaving this garbage on my face, and it is for a very, very important reason. But rather than just telling you what the reason is, I want to tell you a story, and that'll kind of work its way into the reason I am doing it. So, yeah, if you don't mind, I'm just going to get straight into it. So pretty much, and this is going to sound like I'm telling you my life story, but I promise I'm not. It's just there's some important points I need to hit on. So first of all, pretty much as long as I can remember, my parents were separated. So my mum lived in the city where I'm living now, and my dad lived in the country about 3 or 4 hours north. And I love both of them very much my whole life. And I lived with my mum, but I would go stay with my dad a lot. And anyway, both my step-parents on either side, my stepmom, my stepdad, were both just evil sons of bitches. They were just really wicked. Anyway, eventually, I think I was about 10 at the time, my stepdad cheated on my mum, had an affair, and they broke up, and everything just kind of went to crap. My mum took up a drinking habit, and the family just kind of fell apart on that side. So I decided it was time for me to go live with my dad. That was a decision I actually made. You would think it was something my parents told me to do, but I said to myself, my mum needs the space right now to get her stuff together without having to worry about looking after me and my siblings as well. But it ended up just being me moving because, how do I explain this without going so into it? My dad is only my dad. My other siblings have different dads. Okay, so I went to live with my dad. So I went to live with my dad, and everything was going great. It was fantastic. Aside from my stepmom, who did abuse me a little bit, she was just a really bad person. You know how some people are just bad people, like just to their core. They just do bad things and they act in bad ways. And she might have a reason, but to me, as a child, I didn't understand them. And looking back on it, still wasn't fair. But anyway, went to live with my dad, and aside from the stepmom thing, it was fantastic. I loved it. Me and my dad were best friends. I wasn't really bullied harshly as a child, but I was by no means popular or had a lot of friends. So I was kind of lonely as a kid, and my dad was my best friend. He always, not only, my mum was the one that made me read a lot, but my dad was the one that made me try to apply it to my life. So yeah, anyway, I had a really good relationship with both my parents. My mum was a little bit salty about me going to live with dad, and after a couple of years, I think I was about 12 or so at the time, my mum decided to move to the country town as well. She lived there when she was younger, so it wasn't a big deal for her to go from the city to the country. But, her husband had an affair and then broken up with her, and she was lonely. She didn't know what to do, so she decided to move up and try to make sure the family stayed close together. And that happened. I promise this is going somewhere. Just bear with me. It's also really hard to shave on a reversed image. Anyway, Mum moved up, and so I was living with Dad, but Mum was close by. It was a very small town. And time goes by, and I'm staying with both of them quite a lot, and my mum started dating a new guy in that small town. And anyway, one day, this is kind of where everything went downhill. One day she got drunk, kind of realized what had happened to her life in a span of a couple of years, and had a meltdown, and she didn't know where to direct all of that aggression, so she directed it at the last person that deserved it, and that was my dad. Mum knew about the way my stepmother treated me, and she basically got drunk and let my dad have it for letting my stepmom do those things, even though my stepdad never did. When my stepdad witnessed it, he brought his foot down hard, but in most cases I kept it to myself because I knew my dad loved my stepmom and I didn't want to cause a rift at the time. I was just a kid, so I didn't understand what was going on. But for the most part, he didn't even know what was going on, so this was shocking to him. And my mum did basically the worst thing she could, and she just told him he was a bad dad and told him that she was going to make sure he didn't see me again and all this stuff. And obviously I was there when this happened, and I kind of freaked out. Tried to split it up, tried to get mum to shut the fuck up. And then dad got in the car and drove off. You could tell he was distraught. And turns out he didn't go home that night. And days passed, and then weeks passed, and I started becoming really worried. I thought, to me as a kid, I just assumed there was something I'd been doing that kept him away. Eventually, my dad was classified as a missing person, and the investigation started, and I should mention as well, I did have a sibling on my dad's side, a little sister, and I separated myself from her when all this was going down because I didn't know how to cope with it all, and I thought, some stupid part of me thought that it would be my responsibility to look after her if something had happened to dad, and that freaked me out even more, so I just kept my distance. And years and years and years passed, like 5 years, and I graduated school. I moved back to the city on my own. I decided to do it on my own. My mum still lives in that small country town. And yeah, some time went past, and at this point I'd come to terms with the fact he was missing, but I always told myself that I would rather know what happened to him for closure, because I was sick of not knowing. That was the worst part, not knowing. And sadly enough, that was proven to me one day that's not always preferable. I remember it vividly because it was around the time that my most serious girlfriend of my life at that point had actually just broken up with me. And my grandparents called, and I thought they were calling me because they heard about it and they knew her, so they liked her. Thought maybe they were calling to ask what happened, all that kind of stuff, but they're actually calling to say that the police had found some bones in the forest with a noose that matched up with those of my dad's dental records, that kind of thing. I refused to believe it at first. I was in denial. I thought, a noose, really? No, dad wouldn't have done that. And it wasn't until like a few weeks later that it really sunk in, when I got the big yellow police envelope in the mail that had all of the documents that they provide to family members in those circumstances. I pray you've never seen them. That gives you all of the evidence and conclusive results of their investigation, and that was that my dad had hung himself in a forest. And from the time it looked like it happened that night, that he and my mum had the blue. I should mention, in all these years, I'd been on and off blaming my mum for my dad going missing. In retrospect, it wasn't her fault. It was bad, but something like that doesn't... What my mum did that night, that can't have been the only thing that pushed a guy like my dad into doing something like that. He was the cliche, lovable, small-town guy that everyone knows. Everyone sees him walking down the street and they go, "Hey, Bob, how you going?" And he was friendly to everyone. That's the kind of guy he was. He was just friends with everyone. He never had a bad word to say about anyone. So I believe that there had to be more that people just didn't know about that made him want to do that. There has to be more that pushed my dad to end his life in the forest alone. Anyway, I did say I was shaving my face for a reason, and I meant it. The reason I now look so goofy and have a clean shave is because I've never had suicidal tendencies. but suicide has still had an impact on me, and it's had that for a lot of people. And during the month of November, I will be growing a big old mustache to raise money for organizations that help to tell men, to show men. They're trying to break the stigma that it's not manly to talk to people about your feelings, because the rate of male suicide, and I realize suicide impacts everyone and affects everyone. It is something that everyone at some point deals with, of all genders, race, creeds, whatever. But the reason it's important to focus, at least, if only for 1 month, on the males is because they don't think they can talk to people about this stuff. They think it's weak, and it's part of the stigma that we as a society have built. So yeah, I'm growing a mustache during November to raise money. Please check out the link in the description below that takes you straight to the actual Movember website. I set the bar low as to how much money I want to raise for it, but like I said, it provides money for organizations so that they can advertise, so that they can make people aware that they exist. These are organizations that provide help and consulting and advice and support to not just men, but everyone that has suicidal thoughts. And I think it's so important, because if people like my dad had known that having a dick between your legs doesn't mean that you can't tell people you need help, and if he had done it, things would be really different. And if you yourself need help, I'm going to be putting some links down there below as well, directly to places that can help you out. It's an important course. And if you, boy or girl, if you have the capability of growing a mustache, maybe give it a go. Yeah, that's really all I've got to say, guys. I didn't do this to get sympathy or anything like that. I haven't even really told many people about this, just because it's not something I like talking about. But I did want to bring it up, and this will probably be the only time I bring it up on this channel, because it's important for things like Movember to raise awareness and to make people know that they're not alone. So thank you, and I'm sure the next time you see this face, it'll probably have more hair on it. At least up here. Alrighty, yeah, that's it. See ya.